We welcome you back to Talladega Super Speedway as we get ready for race number 4 of season 51 of the RTG Tally Challenge. We're getting closer and closer to the halfway point of the regular season, where we're eventually going to find out the 10 drivers that will battle in this season's playoffs. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Fremont. Zach, I mean, we've had 3 races so far, 3 different winners. Have we entered into the territory of the season where we could see our first repeat winner, or do you think we go 4 for 4?
It's a great question, Seth. Taking into account that this is a super speedway, we're at Talladega as we are every Thursday night. I wouldn't be surprised to see a repeat winner. However, on the flip side of that coin, I also wouldn't be surprised to see a new winner. You never know when you might find yourself in trouble out there on the racetrack, and you never know when you might find yourself in the perfect position to catch a stroke of good luck, too, that could edge you out the victory, as well as, the help of those cars out there around you as well. So, I don't know. I think it's kind of a toss-up, Seth. I don't think... Let's see how the race plays out. We'll talk about it with about 2 laps to go. How's that sound?
That sounds like a good idea. We'll get a general idea of who's still in the vicinity to be able to take that checkered flag. All 3 of the form winners this season are in the field here tonight. Of course, Grant Wesley was not able to be in the field last week, but he's back in here in the 88 machine. The drivers here tonight, obviously, all gunning for victory lane, but there are some that probably also would like to just keep themselves up there in the top 10 in points to be able to battle for a playoff spot. And a driver that comes in a critical spot, 10th in the standings, is Bob Dixon, and he's the driver we're going to talk to here tonight pre-race. Find out what the strategy is going to be of the driver of the 143 McDonald's Dodge. Hey, Bob, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yes.
Well, man, we just talked a moment ago about your position in the points, 10th in the standings, so, we're getting close to the halfway of this regular season. What's the strategy here? Is it obviously try and go for victory lane, or is it try and preserve your car and preserve your spot in the standings?
Listen, I'm always in it to win it, but I have not had a lot of good luck at the Thursday night Talladega League. But yeah, a good friend of mine that I drive with here on this league on Thursday night, we get together and we've started working on keeping our cars clean, avoiding the wrecks, avoiding contact, and that it has put us up to up there in the points compared to what we used to be seasons ago.
We've been noticing you here practicing making pit stops and everything. Do you see pit road coming into play in a big way here tonight? Or based on the fact that we're now tied here this evening with most cars that we've had with 31, do you maybe see it being more fuel strategy and avoiding the big one?
No, no. The pit is all about it. This pack is going to stay together for the first 10, 12, 15 laps. But as soon as we have the first pit stop, green flag pit stop, it's going to change everything. Always does.
Hey, Bob, it's Zach up here in the booth. Good luck tonight here at Talladega. Looking at your results so far this season, looks like you've got an 8th week 1, 19th week 2. But with week 2, you had a few lap slot on that one. And last week, of course, with that 6th place finish. What's it going to take for you to edge into that top 5 and possibly be right up there to contend for a win at the end?
I just got to keep cool. I just got to be careful, keep my car clean, and run in there and do a hot pit for those green flag pit stops and stay with the pack.
Well, it's going to be 66 laps, and hopefully, Bob, you'll be able to execute that, and hopefully we'll see you up there in the vicinity to take that checkered flag at the end of this thing. Best of luck out there.
We're going to try. Thank you so much for covering it and the chat.
Interesting here. I mean, you and I talked, Zach, before we came on. You know, we've talked with the league admins and everything, and they say usually when we get to about 30 or 30 plus cars, we end up having quite a number maybe of cautions coming out during the course of that race. But Bob doesn't seem to think so. He still thinks that pit road's going to be the make it or break it area.
Yeah, I think, Seth, that's just a testament to the amount of faith that these drivers have in one another. Super speedway racing can be very, very, very treacherous, but these guys do it together week in, week out. They, for the most part, they understand how each other work out on the racetrack, and when things happen around them, how that's likely going to play out. But I think Bob's in a good place. I've been really impressed with him running the last 4 or 5 weeks now. He's always right there, man. He never gives up, he never quits, and if he can better himself, he's going to, and that sounds exactly like what he's trying to do tonight.
You know, I mentioned already, this is race 4. Next week's going to be the midway portion of the regular season. Looking at the point standings, it's almost like looking at 2 entirely different seasons in terms of who's up there. We've obviously got Bob Seminara, Joe DeSpirito, Grant Wesley. They've been drivers that we see up at the top of the point stand season after season. But, looking just outside the top 5, you got Sonny Tallman, John Godfrey, Jessica Shelton, Dave Melson. These are drivers that were not in the playoffs last season. And then you look at the drivers that were up there in the playoffs last season. You got Bernie Mobbs down in 12th, Josh Metallic down in 14th, way down in 22nd where you find Mark Paglia. Is this the part of the season where those drivers have to get their momentum going to make sure they're going to be in those 10 drivers that battle for the championship?
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt, it is. I think when you're that far behind, we're week 4 now, and these cutoffs happen really, really quick with the way that this championship is formatted. So I think if you're in a position like Mark Paglia is right now, 22nd in points, 63 points out, I think he's really, really got to dig down. He's going to have to try to have a smart race, as best race as he can, and try to keep the nose of that race car clean. As long as he can do that, and he can edge his way up to some top 5s and top 10s, by the end of the season, we might find him right back in contention again.
Well, I'd like to say that this is a top story, but really it sounds like a broken record. Joe DeSpirito is your pole sitter for tonight's race. He is now 4 for 4 in starting that 24 car on the inside of the front row, and it just seems like week after week there have been a couple of drivers that have been close to knocking him off, but do we see DeSpirito going 10 for 10? Because it just seems like he's got qualifying nailed down here at Talladega.
All right, 10 for 10. I don't know. We might, we might hold this. Just stop right there. Just, I mean, if he could do that, that would be amazing, without a doubt. But the fact that he's gotten 4 in a row now, it makes me wonder. If you look at the point standings, as we were just talking about, you see Joe DeSpirito is up top of those point standings, 3 over Dante Ricci. Is there any correlation, do you think, Seth, between getting the best starting position that you can, trying to maintain the best track position, and being there at the end of the race?
There could be, but I'll tell you, the last 2 weeks, he has started on the pole, and that inside line has not gotten the momentum it needs for him to be able to lead the first lap. The first lap in the last 2 weeks has been led by the driver on the outside of the front row, Bob Seminara. Now you got Bernie Mobbs lying on the outside of the front row, so it'll be interesting to see if maybe DeSpirito has noticed that the last couple of weeks, tries to get a good enough start to maybe move up to that middle line, or at least pull that inside line with him, because that inside starting spot has not been his best friend in the first couple laps past 2 times we've been here at Talladega.
Well, and that's also very interesting, Seth, because if you look at the drivers in position 1, 2, and 4, that's that Florida gang that we were talking about last week. These are guys that know each other. They race together quite a bit. So it makes you wonder if maybe then racing a little bit more aggressively than DeSpirito would like to do at the beginning of that race, if he's like, okay, you guys more aggressive, Seth.
Well, let's see if they've got something planned out here maybe for the start. Get us underway. We're green flag racing at Dega. DeSpirito to tuck in front, so they had that mastered perfectly. If they had a plan, that was executed to perfection. As right now the top 3 single file, we're nearly 3 wide from 4th place on back.
Yeah, it's gonna get really interesting here with the largest field of car. Well, this tying the largest field of cars so far this season. I think if these cars can keep themselves out of trouble and keep relatively close together, we might see quite a bit of three wide racing as you see the lines starting to form up a little farther back, but toward the front of the pack, everybody pretty content to just run single and double file and play nice for the time being.
Josh Metallic's going to lead that outside line with Grant Wesley. Now, remember that you alluded to this is tied for the most cars in a race so far this season. Wesley was the one that went to victory lane the last time we had 31 cars in the field.
Yeah, I'm interested in seeing what that 39 and that top line is going to be able to do here. If you remember, he was really, really fast last week until there was a little bit of a technical issue in turns 3 and 4 that caused a big wreck. But it looks like that high line, maybe a few less cars than what that inside line has at the moment. Behind them, they're getting a little bit more racy.
But they are making it work. Just moments ago, Metallic was only up alongside 4th place. He's now about to get up to the right rear quarter panel of Bernie Mobbs, and they're now going to add Chuck McClure to that mix as he just barely tucked up between Dave Melson and the front of Billy Elliser.
Yep, and if you remember last week, that number 17 car, he's a really fast lead car, but he's also a really, really good pusher. He can really help drive momentum and be a real key point in racing on these super speedways.
Now going to be side by side for the lead coming off of turn 4, and you can see the numbers have now shifted to that middle groove. There's about maybe 7, 8 cars lined up on the bottom, about 13, 14 cars on the top, and Metallic's going to edge ahead. I think he's going to lead this lap in the Oscar Mayer Ford.
Yep, scoring will confirm Metallic to P1. That bottom line losing just a little bit of momentum, but Josh got a lot of drafting help in the form of that number 88 car of Grant Wesley back there. Those guys are looking fast.
Further back, though, they continue to be 3 wide. I believe that was Bobby Farrell that was stuck in the middle for a good portion of that. Now they settle it out to double wide formation, and it'll be interesting to see here if these drivers now being just side by side, if they can settle into a long green flag run. I mean, when we talked with Bob Dixon pre-race, he was saying he's expecting more than likely these drivers will make it around that lap 15 to lap 17 mark where they would have to at least make the first round of pit stops under green.
Yeah, and I think I would agree with that. I think it's far more odd when you see a yellow flag before the first round of pit stops than it is to see them race it to that first round of pit stops. We all know with super speedway racing, they are unpredictable, and there's a lot of factors that you can't take into account in the first half of the race. You can figure out if your car is comfortable, if it's fast, if it's slow, who it's fastest with, if you're better pushing or following. But at this point in the race, that's all you're doing. You're not trying to race yourself out of a car. You want to be there at the end.
Top 2 gonna clear for first and second with Metallic and Wesley. Leaves Melson and Despirito side by side. A couple of drivers that are towards the back of the pack that have really made the back to front strategy work for them, at least so far this season. Dante Ricky, of course, one of them. Starts at the back just about every single week, and of course won the season opener, but also another driver that I believe is a teammate to his, the 55 of Sonny Tallman. He's up to 6th in the stands, and he also does the strategy of riding at the back early on this race. It's amazing, you look at them, and then you look at guys like Joe Despirito, who start up front every week. They're all up there at the top of the point stands, but they all get there in different ways.
Yeah, everybody has a different means of finishing in different positions. Obviously, you want to finish as best as you can, but there's a lot of strategy that goes on at these super speedways. You wouldn't think of, when you're just watching the race and you're going, okay, this seems pretty tame. There doesn't seem to be a whole lot going on. No, there's a lot more involved in that. And when you can find somebody that you work with real well, I don't think it's any surprise to see Dante work his way back up to the front. And I also don't think it's any surprise to see that Florida gang that always hangs right up there at the front of the pack. Back or rear, it doesn't matter. It depends mostly on where you're most comfortable.
Well, Josh Metallic was a former winner from last season, made it into the playoffs as a result. Trying to see if he can win one here today. He's got Grant Wesley pushing him, but with the fact that we're so young into the season with only 3 drivers that have been to victory lane, there's so many drivers that are still contenders that could maybe take their first checkered flag of the season. Right now, if you look at your top 5, Wesley's the only one that's been to victory lane here in season 51.
Yep, Wesley, the only one currently. I think the 17 and the 39 had a real good shot last week before there was a little bit of an incident here. But I think what we see here is those top 6 cars on that high line, they're all pushing very well. they're doing it aggressively, but they're also, you know, not doing it too aggressive to a point where it's causing issues. And when you got those when you get 5 cars lined up like that can do a solid bump draft all the way down that front straightaway. Doesn't matter if you got 4, 5, 6 cars on that bottom line. The cars with more momentum, those are going to be the ones that are going to be quickest.
Yeah, how about that sixth car on the outside line? New colors for the 60 of Perry Bond, the Georgia Pacific Autism Speaks scheme on his Ford Mustang. And he was en route to a top 10 run 2 weeks ago in race number 2 before he ended up getting involved in a wreck. I think it was on the final lap, ended up having some internet connection issues as well that sent Richard Martin flying on the front straightaway. And those two nose to tail right now on that outside line.
Yep, it's just an afterthought. They're not even thinking about that right now. They're settled in. They look pretty comfortable. Both drivers looking to have a real solid race so far. They're using their abilities to get up through the field as best as they can. And now that they're within the top 10, I think they're pretty content to ride until pit stops.
3 wide in the middle. I believe that's Manny D in the 710 going backwards. No help in that middle groove as top 4 continue to remain single file. But what I'm finding interesting, especially with these top 2, Grant Wesley is tucked right up underneath the bumper of that 39 car. And we've seen before when drivers are able to line up that well and leave drivers double file behind them, they actually are able to open up a bit of a gap. But there's really not that much daylight between Chuck McClure in 4th place and Billy Olliser in 5th.
No, there's really not. But I'll tell you what, the way that Grant Wesley and Josh Metallic are using that bump draft to their advantage now, with Wesley tucked right up to that back bumper, it looks almost all the way around the track. I bet he's backing off just a little bit in those corners, but they're carrying 200 miles an hour off into those corners. It is really hard, Seth, to get a run. It doesn't matter what line you're in, top, middle, or bottom. To get a run on a line of cars that is doing 200, that is about the pinnacle. The way that these setups are, the way it's geared and everything like that, that's pretty much top speed.
Right now it's a Ford leading 3 Chevrolets. Drop a little bit further back here in the field, and a couple of drivers that we mentioned kind of shocking where they are in the point standings right now, and one of them outside of the top 10, that's Mark Paglia in the 28, the Trevor Bayne looking colors with the very familiar Wood Brothers Motorcraft scheme, the red and white on that 28 car. And this is, I think, a driver that definitely, you alluded to, this is go time for drivers that were in the playoffs last season that don't look like they're going to be making it this season unless something turns around. I think he may be the one guy especially that we're looking at that needs to have a good run here today, just based off the poor performances he's had, especially in the first 2 races.
Oh, for sure. 63 points out of the lead, 22nd in points. This is week 4. I think if a guy like Mark Paglia has another... Oh, as you see, Skelton up the racetrack. That was close.
Skelton
Not sure exactly what happened there.
Yeah, I'm not sure if she dropped back there of her own accord or if there was contact. And then you had Godfrey and Farrell who got down on the apron trying to give room in that 3-wide situation in 3. That was a close one.
That was real close, but it looks like everybody gathered it up pretty well. It doesn't look like there was any significant damage done to anybody on the racetrack. But as we were talking about with Paglia, 22nd in points, week 4, I don't think you can afford to have another bad point night. I think that you have to get up there. You have to get a top 10, have to get a top 5 finish just to keep fighting. I think if Mark has a bad night and finishes any worse than 15th, unfortunately, that might be the end of his season. I mean, obviously, he'll still be able to run for points and everything like that, but that might be watching a championship go right out the window.
Could be finding himself maybe even just 6 races away from the end of the regular season in a must-win situation because, yeah, race 1, race 2, maybe even race 3, the points are really close, and a good finish will give you an opportunity to be able to gain a lot of points. But at this point in time, things are going to start getting rather spread out points-wise in the standings.
Yeah, they sure are. As you can see, everybody's pretty much single file. I think that little bit of a scare there with that Skelton incident in 3 and 4 might have sobered everybody up. Hey, guys, we don't want to wreck them up too soon. This might be a little too early, Seth.
Well, I'll tell you what, with them running single file like they are, I actually just got word the reason that the 94 had that problem, a little bit of a checkup there at the front of the field, sending the 94 towards the back with loss of momentum, and maybe that's why we saw a lot of drivers kind of darting out of line as well.
Trying to see who that was, but there was
the 87 of Benoit Plort, I believe.
Yep, that looks like it is going to be the 87. I'm not sure if there was any initial contact or anything like that, but I saw him shoot up across the racetrack in turn 4, get it up in the wall, lost quite a bit of momentum here. Hopefully he doesn't have too much damage on the right side of that car, but he's quickly losing the draft, Seth.
And we're only, well, now 13 laps into this race and already have a lap machine. Wayne Pribnow has just been put a lap down in that double zero. So tough break there for him. I don't know if he lost the draft when we initially went to green, but they caught him pretty quickly. And now he's hoping and praying for a caution to get him back on the lead lap. And look at this. They were single file, but now a second line is formed. It's the Florida boys up on the top side.
Yep, it looks like Despirito, Mobs, and Seminara up top there. They're trying to make a little bit of headway. They see that these guys up to the front of the pack are really quick. The 88 is still not relenting at all on the back bumper of that 39, and these guys know that if they're going to do something, they can't wait for the cars in front of them to move because everybody's following the cars that are fastest right now.
Tell you what we're doing as well. We're getting close to when that window opens up for these drivers to start making their first round of green flag pit stops. And last week, that second group that came to pit road, there were about 20 cars in that group. And I wonder if we might be seeing some drivers pit right now. You see that Grant Wesley is going to jump to the inside of the 39.
Yep, a handful of cars just jumped to the inside. Wesley left the 39 hanging, and it doesn't look like anybody's going to be ducking down on the pit road right now, but we'll see how fast the 88 and the 17 can be when they hook up right now. Looks like Josh just lost too much momentum on that high side. When the 88 ducked out and a couple other cars, he's going to be trying to get pushed back up to the front again.
We mentioned the fact that Grant Wesley, despite the fact that he won 2 weeks ago, did not take part in last week's race and thusly dropped 4 spots in the standings down to 5th. So he's trying to see if he can get himself up there to the top of the point stands again, because there actually are some playoff points on the line for the regular season champion.
Yep, and you were asking at the beginning of the broadcast about repeat winners. I think right at this point, not trying to take anything away from Dante or Bob Seminara, I think at this point, we've seen how good Grant is on these super speedways. He knows how to work around these tracks. He knows how to draft. He knows where he needs to be at times that he needs to be there. So I think if we're going to see a repeat winner, my money's on that 88 car.
Well, he, for no doubt, in these type of races, always seems to be up in the top 5. Very rarely do you see him fall outside of the top 10 unless he's involved in a wreck or something. So yeah, I agree with you for sure. Seminara has dropped back to around 9th, and Dante Ricky has not yet decided it's time to be able to make a charge up to the front. You see that neon yellow 84 still back there on that top side is what Grant Wesley, he chose the bottom. He got the lead for a brief moment, but that outside line charged back to the front with Josh Metallic and Dave Nelson.
Man, that outside line had a lot of speed. They were doing really well. I'm kind of surprised to see the 39 and the 13 drop to that inside line. But those Florida boys, man, they got quite a run coming into that front straightaway. By turn 1, they might be side by side with Metallic, Seth.
It's amazing. About 17 laps ago, we were talking about Metallic going around Despirito on the outside. Now it's Despirito going around Metallic for the race lead.
Yep. Remember, Despirito is your point leader. Bernie Mobs isn't too far behind. Bob Seminara also 3rd in points right now. So these guys, it's interesting because we saw them drop back a little bit, but they dropped back and they've made their way back up front again. And a big reason that was able to happen for them is we saw those guys up front get really, really, really racy. Meanwhile, those 3 have just been super patient and gotten themselves back into position to contend for the lead again.
We talk about Talladega and Daytona. It's just at 190 miles per hour, and you're right. If someone makes a move that's just a little bit wrong, there's always going to be a group or one driver in particular that's going to be able to capitalize. As I'm starting to see more and more drivers moving down to the inside line. Bob Dixon has now moved down there, and we're on lap 19. I think this is about the furthest these drivers can go before they have to start coming to pit road. So we may have a whole gaggle of cars coming to pit lane this time off of 4.
Yeah, we're really going to have to keep our eye on that stuff because I see a couple hands out the windows, a couple guys motioning like they're going to be pulling in this time. So we'll see. It looks like there's going to be a pretty big pack here. How many of them are going to break off? Are they all going to come in together?
They might very well. Here comes Metallic, and ooh, wow. Joe Despirito had to avoid Chuck McClure.
Oh, no.
Pit road.
Oh, no.
There's a lot of cars spinning. Dixon's around. Metallic is sideways. There were even more that were back there spinning. Caution's going to come out.
Yeah, the caution's going to come out. We saw Despirito lose it, and then we saw Bob
Oh,
Dixon lose.
wow! I don't know what happened to Sonny Tallman. I think he just pounded the inside wall heading into turn 1.
Oh, that car is used up.
Right on the crest of when these drivers are going to have to hit pit road, and sometimes there's wrecks that take place coming onto pit lane that don't bring out a yellow, but there were about 5-6 cars that were all facing the wrong way, so good call there by the race officials to throw the yellow flag there. A lot of oncoming traffic heading onto the pit lane entrance.
Man, Seth, I think that 55 took a real hard hit to that inside barrier. It looks like he's still out there running around right now. I'm kind of surprised. That car is used up. I'll tell you what, if he can get that back to the pits, even if it pulls back out, I can't speak on how competitive that car is going to be.
I mean, the worst place to get damage on a car at a super speedway race is that front end because it is so aerodynamically dependent in the super speedway type races. We're going to look at the incidents that happened coming onto pit road. And, I saw at least 4 cars that were spun around. Metallic was one. Despirito completely missed the entrance to pit road. Dixon was around. And then there was like 3 or 4 others that were spun out further back.
Yeah, it looks like the 710 was sideways. The 711 was sideways. It looks like Seminara may have actually made contact with the back end of the 39 as it was stalled at the entrance to pit road. A couple other cars, the 710-45, getting together. It'd be interesting to see if those cars got any damage out of that, because at first glance it didn't look too bad, but then you see the contact that they're making as they all bottleneck at the entrance of pit road there. And man, hope that doesn't slow them up too much.
I want to watch the 24 of Joe Despirito because I'm not even sure how he even got close to making it onto pit road because he had to avoid the 17 of Chuck McClure, who decided to stay out. Watch as he starts slowing down, has to duck in behind the 17 and just entered way too wide. So did Dixon, Manny D back there, John Godfrey. They were sideways as well, and I think we had a couple of others that were sideways. We'll try and go back and see what happened to them.
Yeah, it looks like the 87 car, Benoit Plorde. It looks like him and Jessica Skelton may have gotten together coming off of turn 4 as that melee was happening at the entrance of pit road, and that 87 is pretty used up as well. Took a hard lick to that outside wall.
Take a look at that here. We'll also take a look and see what happened to the 55 of Sonny Tallman. Came running so well in this race, 6th in the standings, and there's the contact with the 94 and the 87. That's another hard impact there. You're right, for the John Deere Dodge. And a lot of that damage to the rear end of the race car. Looks like he may have taken a little bit of a shot there as well with the left front.
I am really interested in seeing what Sonny Tallman's crew does here. The car is back out on the racetrack again. Front end doesn't look like it's too bad since the crew has repaired it, but man, Seth, I'll tell you what, he hit that inside concrete barrier so hard. I can't believe that motor is still running on that car.
Here's a look at what happened. He's behind Donnie Garrett, and they're coming to the caution flag, and it looks like the 77 starts slowing down. Might have actually been dumping the clutch to start saving fuel, because I think a lot of these drivers would have had to come to pit road the following lap, and I don't think the 55 was expecting the slow up to happen that soon. Wasn't able to react in time and gets into Garrett, sends him down into the inside wall, and that's not really a safer barrier down there either. That's a pretty hard lick.
That is an extremely hard look. I think that team is lucky that motor is still chugging. I really can't believe that it's not buried right up to the firewall, Seth, with the angle and the speed that he hit. It looks like he's going to be on pit road again with a handful of other cars. Not sure if cars are serving penalties or exactly what's going on here, but there's quite a few cars on pit road right now.
Looks like the 10, the 24, the 94 are all on pit road. 143, I believe, was just on pit road. Might have been some drivers that had to serve penalties because of an unsafe pit entry there, because I believe the 24 and the 143 completely missed the commitment cone. Looks like two drivers are going to be calling it a night after this one. Sonny Tallman has taken his car to the garage area, and Benoit Plourde has retired from the race. And so Sonny Tallman, who came into this race top 10 in the point stand, is going to have some work to do next week. And I thought he might actually try and continue. You mentioned about him still being underpowered because of the fact of the situation he is in points. You know, you never know. Other drivers might run into some problems, and every position's a point.
That's so true, Seth. And that's so frustrating for those guys because I think both of those incidents when the yellow flag was already out, obviously not anything intentional, not anything anybody did to try to wreck anybody there. But when you wad your car up like that under yellow flag and it takes you out of the race, man, it's so disheartening. So, really unfortunate to see for those two drivers.
Up front here are pretty much the drivers that got onto pit road safely and subsequently are going to have good starting track position. Bernie Mobbs going to be getting us back underway with Billy Elliser to his outside. Looks like Bob Seminara, Richard Martin, and John Godfrey. That's going to be the top five when we go back green. The only driver that was a lap down when that caution came out one was Wayne Pribnow. He's going to be the recipient of the free pass and get back on the lead lap, plus the fact he's going to pick up a couple spots, passing both the 87 and the 55 here in terms of the standings. So lucky break there for Wayne Pribnow as he's going to go around. They'll get themselves doubled up to go back racing. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to your point to see about some of those drivers that got some damage there. Josh Metallic with a little bit of contact from Bob Seminara to see if those drivers will be up to speed. We've seen drivers take some pretty good licks and still be able to remain competitive in the draft, but not necessarily have the speed to be able to lead a group.
Yeah, no, I think like the 712 and the 39, they're probably okay right now. I don't think that they took too much damage. Again, those wrecks happened as they were getting down to pit road speed. Metallic's car wasn't moving. I can't imagine Seminara's car could have been going too fast, knowing that there was melee ahead of him either. So it'll be really interesting to see. But then again, we also know even if that 39 isn't fast enough to lead a pack, he's also a really, really good pusher. So that doesn't put any of those guys out of the race quite yet.
Metallic started this race up at the front. I believe he qualified 8th, and we saw him up leading the field at no time at all. And now he's going to be restarting all the way back right now in the 24th position. So we'll see if he's able to work his way back up to the front of the field and how long it's going to take him. Bernie Mobbs coming into this race 12th in the point standings, trying to see if he can find victory lane, another driver that was in the playoffs last season.
Yep, Bernie having a nice solid run. If you think back the last 2 weeks now, he's done a great job of keeping his car clean and keeping it in contention for the win at the end of the race. And that's really paying off for him right now on points.
Couple of drivers that were kind of riding at the back or the middle of the pack that are up here as well now. Some new faces. Carson Krentz, the 03. Dante Ricky's now about up here in the top 10, the 84. And Chris Elliott in the 9. He was a contender last week. We thought he might be a sleeper to maybe take a checkered flag. He's up here in the top 10 now on this restart. That 9 restarting in 9th.
Come across the line, get the green flag. Seminara right up on the back bumper of Mobbs number 90. He's going to back off just a little bit. You see behind about 5th place, they get a little bit of gap on the leaders, but everybody pretty spread out right now as they get up to speed coming out of turn 2 down the backstretch. So I think by the time they come around to the front straightaway again, I think we'll be right back up to high 190s again.
And all of a sudden, Billy Elliser looks in his rearview mirror, and there's really nobody there. Now Carson Krentz and Dante Ricky are there, but everybody that was on that top line abandoned ship and went down to the inside line as Mob, Seminara, now John Godfrey going to move into that 3rd position. Keep your eye on that 712. Another driver, been very consistent start of this season. Subsequently comes into this race 7th in the point standings.
Yeah, and as we speak, we got a pretty good battle for 5th and 6th place on the racetrack as we see Donnie Garrett make a move up to the high side with the number 43 car. We'll see if those guys can get a little bit of momentum, get a run on these Florida boys.
Yeah, first time really we've talked about Donnie Garrett here tonight. Donnie coming into this race 10th in the point stands, actually tied with Bob Dixon for 10th in points. And oh no, he tried to go up the middle, makes contact with Godfrey, and there he goes, and it's a big one, a big mess on the back straightaway.
Lot of cars around, a lot of cars sideways.
Oh, and McClure with a late hit on John Godfrey. Dixon's facing the wrong way, and it just looked like maybe, just maybe, I think Garrett was trying to stick his car up the middle, and there just wasn't enough room to make it work.
Yeah, no, it looked like there was a door open for him, and by the time that he got the nose of that Chevy in there, it closed, and it closed hard. I thought for a second maybe they were going to be able to save it because they were sideways for a good 2 or 3 seconds there before everything let loose and cars started going both sides of the racetrack.
Now, obviously, we're going to have to look back at some replays here, but for the most part, just from what I was able to see, it looked like a lot of drivers spinning. I didn't see a lot of heavy contact out of that one. Certainly a smoke show on the back straightaway, but I don't think we have really any torn up race cars, despite how many drivers were involved in that.
You know, I didn't want to jinx it, Seth, but I was thinking that same exact thing as we were talking just a second ago. I didn't see any exceptionally hard hits. I didn't see the hit that the 17 took, so I'll have to take a look back at that. But yeah, like you said, unless there was any cars up in the outside wall, I didn't see anybody take any hard licks to the inside.
See if we can find out what exactly happened here with Donnie Garrett. We'll actually look and see just how much space he had, courtesy of the helicopter cam. Will give us a nice aerial look, and I just think that Godfrey kind of moved down. Martin had moved up, and Donnie Garrett just saw a hole there. He had a whole bunch of momentum, and he wanted to see if he could make that middle line work, and the hole just kind of closed up on him. I think it might have been the 43 that came down, and that's where the contact started. But you're right, they nearly had that thing saved for a couple seconds there.
Yeah, and I saw the same exact thing you did. I saw the 77, running pretty solid in that middle line, and the 711 came up, and the other car came down. There was nothing Donnie could have done aside from dumping out of the gas entirely, but I don't think even at that point it would have made too much difference. The 17 did look like it made pretty significant contact with the 711. But like we talked about a second ago, I did see a few pretty hard hits to the outside wall, but it looked like maybe only 4 or 5 cars. So we'll have to see when they come into the pits here.
Yeah, I think a couple of those drivers would have been Bob Dixon and Bobby Farrell that took some hits into that outside wall. We'll have to see how it affects them here, but certainly nothing like some of the hard hits we saw in our first caution. The hit by Benoit Plord, the hit by Sonny Tallman, taking them out of the race, and doesn't look like anybody at this point is going to be taking their cars behind the wall. So it looks like they'll all be able to continue, but of course we're going to, as you said, wait until we end up going back green to find out what the full extent of the damage is on each one of these machines.
Yep, and it looks like after pit stops, the 90 and the 712, they got out front again. Those cars are in pretty good shape. I think everybody in about the first half of the field is in pretty good shape right now. I think when you get toward that second half or that 3/4 mark is where you might start seeing some cars with a little bit of damage. But this race isn't over yet, Seth. And I'm not trying to jinx it because I don't want to see anybody wreck out, but I don't think that's the last one that we're going to see either. We still got about 40 laps to go.
I definitely agree with you. Somewhere along the line here, Terry Bombard in the 10 lost a lap. Looks like he's going to be the recipient of the free pass this time. And a couple of drivers deciding to stay out here, including John Godfrey, Chuck McClure, who we saw both those drivers actually get involved in the wreck. Donnie Garrett.
We're going to see him come in, Seth, because with 40 laps to go right now, I think it's time to start thinking strategy. Excuse me. You might think it's a little early, but
pit at least one more time. And when we go back green, just depending on how much they've saved, it's more than likely going to be somewhere around the lap 47 to lap 49 mark. So these drivers trying to see if they can stretch it to just have it be one more pit stop here this evening. But to your point, if we end up having some more cautions, it's going to kind of have to put in the back of their mind, do I want to come to pit road, get those fresher tires, give up that track position, even though I may not be able to make it on fuel from this point on?
I don't know. I think right now, in a driver's head, here's what I would be thinking. I would be thinking to myself, okay, 40 laps to go. I know I can make it about 20 laps on a fuel run. It's going to be stretching it, but I can make that as long as I'm not out leading the pack. I think the first 2 or 3 cars, they might have a little bit of trouble. But if you're farther back, mid-pack, you can totally make this on one more pit stop, assuming no more yellows come out. Now, if another yellow comes out, that's going to just throw the rest of the strategy out the window because then everybody would be able to make it with one more pit stop. But if we go green from here, I think that's where the strategy comes into play.
That first round of green flag pit stops we had, obviously, that was back on lap 18. This next pit stop that we have come up, if it is under green flag conditions, is going to be so much closer towards that checkered flag. Do you think that everything we had happen there with that first round of pit stops has these drivers thinking, maybe, just maybe, I want to come to pit road with a smaller group of drivers and we're going to see them maybe split up a little bit more?
Again, I think it's all going to depend on the strategy. I think the cars up toward the front, they're going to have to be careful that they don't use too much fuel because you're not going to make it. And now you see another handful of cars, they're going to come in and get a little bit more fuel just to top off one more time before they go green. But I think if you're the front cars, you got to be a little concerned. Am I going to make it on fuels? Tires aren't this big of a deal, but fuel is a major thing. Can I make it from here? I don't want to burn myself out, and I also don't want to short myself to the point where on the last run, I'm going to be short on that run as well.
We had about 9-10 cars come down pit road to top off the fuel tank, including Cy Jones, who came to pit road after leading that lap. Turns the race lead back over to Bernie Moms, who will restart alongside of Bob Seminara. Row 2 with Richard Martin and Jeffrey Elliott. First time we've mentioned the 56 up here inside of the top 5, as Grant Wesley will complete the top 5 here, followed by Josh Metallic, Billy Elliser, Joe DeSpirito, Glenn Harris, and Mark Paglia. That's going to be your top 10, and interesting that we've got Metallic back up here. I mean, that caution certainly helped him out to gain back the track position he lost after his problem on pit road. And also another driver that it kind of helped as well was the 28 of Mark Paglia. We mentioned we were seeing him run mid-pack most of this race. First time he appears up inside the top 10.
Yep, and I think that these guys are starting to get just a little bit more comfortable now. Again, like we spoke, if that 39 has any damage, it's relatively negligible, and if he's in the draft, it's not going to play a factor. Not unless you get another line of cars that's going to pull a 88-39 and have you going 200-201 at the end of the back straightaway. Josh is sitting pretty right now. He's thankful for that caution flag, and he's thankful that he didn't get involved in it too.
When we go back green, there's going to be a total of 37 laps to go, I should say. We are nearing the halfway point of this race, working our second caution of the night. Second caution did not take out any drivers. The first caution did. Sonny Tallman and Benoit Plord out of the race. 29 of our 31 drivers still running. All 29 still on the lead lap, and still one more pit stop at least looming around the corner for these drivers. And you said it, Zach, and I completely agree with you. The possibility that we have not seen our last yellow flag in the flagman's hands here this evening as well. As down through the tri-oval, remember the start-finish lines all the way down here, headed towards turn number 1. Bernie Mom's about ready to get back up through the gears and get us back underway.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to see if Bob Seminara lays back a little bit to try to give some help to Mobs, or if Mobs lays back. At this point, it doesn't look like either one's going to lay back. They also don't have much of a push from behind. The car is going to be 2 by 2 as they work their way down into turn 1.
Looked like Richard Martin tried to back off a little bit, maybe to try and help Bob Seminara get down to the inside, but Grant Wesley said no. He shoved the 43, and Richard Martin's going to go for the race lead. As a result, door banging down the back straightaway.
Yeah, man, it's a little bit more aggressive than I would have, assumed that it was going to be for lap 30 of the race. But these guys fighting for every single inch. Like we've talked about, this momentum matters. Right now, it's only the 43 and the 88 on the inside line. The next help that they have is 3 car lengths back with that 26. This top line is sitting pretty right now, as long as they can play nicely with each other.
Oh, but Bob Seminara looked like he thought about going up the middle 3 wide, and we saw what happened bringing out our second caution when Donnie Garrett tried to do the same thing. That was a little sketchy going through the tri-oval.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if Seminara intended for that to happen, or if he maybe thought the 90 was going to come down on the door of the 43 a little bit more. One way or another, he laid back. He didn't want to push the issue too much. It is a teammate. As we see, they're going to work down that back straightaway again. I'll tell you what, the 712 and 88 are coming so close off of turn 2. I'm surprised they haven't actually touched yet.
Well, we saw them door banging for the lead. They were also leaning on each other back around 19th place last time by, as I saw Wiley Coate and Chris Elliott not giving each other much room. And
we got to crash, Seth. We got to crash. Looks like we got a car upside down, 3 and 4.
Wiley Coate, Terry Bombard, Cy Jones. That Robbie Nices in the 54 collected up in that one, and there was another driver that was skating around the outside line. I think that might have been the 00 of Wayne Pribnow.
Yeah, that was the 00. Until looked like Wiley took a bit of a tumble down the racetrack. I saw the 17 get a huge run on the outside. I was about to say something about that, and then I saw about 6 or 7 cars into the wall there in 3 and 4.
Perry Bond and the 60 machine caught up in this one as well. So about 6-7 drivers collected up in this wreck. And I mean, you know as well as I do, Zach, when you go flipping and barrel rolling at a track like this, you're more than likely going to get roof damage, and that is hugely detrimental to a car's speed at a super speedway.
Yeah, I got to imagine Wiley's sweating a little bit right now. Doesn't look too off the pace. That left side, though, man, that's torn up real bad on the left side. It's not going to help him for aerodynamics at all. But remember what we were talking about a couple minutes ago, Seth? That whole strategy thing? Take that strategy notebook, throw it out the window. We don't need it anymore.
No, we do not. As this was with the 60 of Perry Bond. We know that with the setup these drivers have, that inside line pushes up so much on entry, and it looks like Mike Rogers was not able to keep it down on the bottom in that 3-wide situation, pushing up into Perry Bond, who then in turn got up into Chuck McClure, and that's how others got involved in this one. Just a byproduct of how difficult this track is, especially for drivers on that inside line. You mentioned it earlier. You know, people might think that these drivers, they're out there just riding around, but especially on that inside line, you're having to fight a tight condition on entry. You're having to avoid running over the car in front of you. There's a ton of checkup that takes place there. These drivers are constantly having to keep themselves aware of their surroundings every single lap.
Yeah. And we see the leaders coming down pit road. They're going to top off on fuel, maybe get some tires. But yeah, it is really tough. I think we talked about that a little bit last week too, Seth. That inside line, after you get to a few laps on those tires, it doesn't stick down there the way that you want it to. And when you go into turn 1 or turn 3 and you're in the bottom of a 3-wide, and you got a car above you that doesn't give you a whole lot of room, you know, so you can't work around, you can't work that steering wheel as much as you'd like to be able to keep it on that white line. Sometime that nose will just drift up just a little bit, and it's a real fine balancing act as well, because when that nose starts to drift up, your first, you know, the first thing that you want to do is dump out of the gas. That way you can get it pointed back to the inside again. But you've also got to take into account you've got a car on your back end, so you can't just completely dump out of the gas. And then sometimes when you do that, the rear end will kick around too. So that's a rough position to be in. I've had it happen a couple times, and it's not uncommon to see those wrecks at the entry and exit of these corners just because of that little bit of a push that you'll get.
Yeah, and like we saw there with Mike Rogers, the tough thing was while he was fighting all of those things, you had the car in the middle of Perry Bond. When you're the car in the middle going into a corner, you're obviously turning the car to the left, and so the car wants to drift down the racetrack. Doesn't give Mike Rogers a whole lot of room to be able to recover that car as it's drifting up the track. And that's why we saw that contact. A couple of other drivers that got involved in the wreck that I didn't realize. Looked like maybe the 9 of Chris Elliott kind of got squeezed up into the wall. So we'll see if that's going to affect him. And I believe Stefan Martel in the 57 got maybe a slight piece of that wreck.
Yeah, it looked like there was a couple hard hits back there, though. Like Robbie Nice is back there. You know, it looks like his car is okay, but he took quite a shot from a car driving into his side. So hopefully he can get that thing running and it's not beaten up too bad. But I'm more concerned again about that 6 car having barrel rolled down that bank a few times. That's not good for aerodynamics, and I can't imagine it helped out the motor a whole lot either.
Absolutely. Wiley Coate coming into this race 17th in the point stands. Kind of an up and down start to his year and was looking to bounce back here today. Lights are still going to be on here atop the pace car, so they're going to at least make one more circuit as Donnie Garrett now emerges to the race lead. He, Dave Melson, and Bob Dixon decided to stay out. Bernie Mobbs, who came down pit road, is going to be restarting back there in 4th with Grant Wesley in 5th. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, and then we'll be back here for the restart. We've just passed the halfway point in race 4 of season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge. You won't miss a thing. We'll be back in just a moment as we go FRN side by side.
Since the VFW was founded, their mission was really to look out for the veterans community, to make sure that our nation upholds its promise to really care for the service member, the veteran, and his or her family. There are several ways that the VFW fights for veterans today. The top services include disability claims assistance, advocacy on Capitol Hill and with the Department of Veterans Affairs. We also offer scholarship opportunities, and then also volunteerism. For me personally, when I came back from Iraq, my life experience was drastically different from those around me, and the veterans of foreign wars really spoke to me. The reason I would encourage veterans who have served overseas today to join the VFW is because this is your organization. The VFW is for veterans. Every generation, a new generation of leaders steps up in the veterans of foreign wars and fights for the veterans community.
The Veterans of Foreign Wars. No one does more for veterans. For more information on the VFW, go to ahctv.com/sacrifice.
Lights are out top pace car. We're getting ready to go back green flag racing here with what's going to be about 31 laps to go here tonight at Talladega Super Speedway, which means these drivers, no matter where they are, still going to have to be on pit road one more time. We saw Donnie Garrett give up the race lead to come to pit road. That now puts the field in the hands of Dave Melson in the 13. Bob Dixon to his inside here for the restart will be in second. Leader has lane choice. Interesting that the 13 decides to take that top side because most of our race leaders decide to take the inside line.
You know, we say it's surprising, Seth, but look at the car that is starting directly behind the 13. One of the best pushes that we've seen so far tonight. I don't think I'm as surprised to see Dave take that outside line, and we've seen time and time again that middle to outside line can really carry some momentum as they work their way down through the trial. I'm kind of confused why Dave's way up there on the racetrack.
Not sure, but we're going green, and he's got such a huge gap right now between himself and the 88. Not really sure what was going on there on that restart, but Nelson's going to lead us into turn one, Wesley behind him. And yeah, you bring up a great point too, because earlier on in this race, when we saw Grant Wesley pushing Josh Metallic to the front, Dave Melson was the car that was lined up right behind him. So those two have been working since the drop of the green flag.
They sure have. As we see a 3 wide, look at Metallic working to the outside of the 43. He's got help from Mark Paglia behind him. Can they make some? Grant Wesley going for the lead.
Well, I mean, everything just kind of stacked up when everyone started reeling each other back in, just with the staggered start we had. So I can't blame Metallic trying that third lane down, and now Bernie Mob's going to jump up there with him.
Man, we got some racing working to go on lap 37 here. But yes, I agree. That is 100% a byproduct of that odd stagger that they had going on there. Looks like Metallic going to get on the outside of the 90 car. 90 car might be stuck in the middle here. But again, that restart, that just completely baffled me, Seth. I'm not really sure what happened there.
No, I'm not really sure either. It was like, I don't know if the 88 backed off or if the 13 just was a little bit higher on pacing speed, but definitely a very unusual looking restart here. And as you said, now we've got this 3 wide situation, but Metallic, after Bernie Mob's jump to the middle, neither the 90 nor the 39 have been able to make very much forward progress.
The 28 dive into the inside of the 39. You know, that makes me wonder, is that 39 car a little bit more damaged than we thought it was from that contact on pit road? You would have thought the 28 would have been pretty happy staying on the back end of Josh Metallic, but it looks like he's quite a bit faster at this point.
We've got up here inside the top 10 now, Wayne Pribnow in the 00, who was the first car put a lap down back on lap 13. Now he's up here in the 8th position. You've also got Bobby Farrell here in the 45. He's now up into the top 5 in that Spree Ford Mustang.
Glenn Harris took a look to the outside of that 45 car. It looks like we got Seminara and Despirito now lined up on the outside, working on Bob Dixon on the outside. Do you think they'll be able to get a run off of turn 4 here coming out of the tri-oval to make a move on Wesley?
Well, I think they definitely have the numbers. Glenn Harris, Dante Ricky, Jessica Shelton, Mark Pagley, they're all up there on that top side. Nothing Grant Wesley can do to stop that momentum, as there's about maybe 3-4 miles per hour difference between the top line and the inside line.
Yep, and that is the difference that top to middle makes. You might not realize it just watching on the screen as the race progresses, but it's like we've talked about a few times now. That middle and top line, you can carry way more momentum out of the corners, which means more speed at the end of the straightaways.
Here comes that third line again. Chuck McClure's jumped up there. Paglia just jumped up there as well. And they're starting to make some forward progress again. Look at Dante Ricky. He's going to the bottom with Jessica Shelton and Grant Wesley, trying to see if they can make the inside line work. Ricky now up to the battle for second.
That outside line might be in a little bit of trouble now, as you see Despirito only got one car behind him as drafting help. Seminara wisely dove to the inside, getting pushed by Ricci now. How about Jess Skelton running up there in fifth position now or so? She's made quite... Oh, we got trouble.
John Godfrey in the 7-Eleven back there, right in the middle of the pack. Donnie Garrett, hard hit into the outside wall in the back straightaway.
Hard licks in that crash, Seth.
And the 7-Eleven of John Godfrey ended up on his roof, turtled on the exit of turn 2.
I'm not quite sure. I didn't see what started that wreck, but I saw two cars sideways all of a sudden. And, yeah, Godfrey, man, flipped it over, slid on his roof, back down. You hate to see... Oh, that 77 vicious hit to that outside wall coming out of turn 2.
Just kind of got the feeling when we saw them 3 wide, 3 rows deep, and continuing 3 wide all the way back through the field, that something somewhere was going to maybe have to give. And unfortunately, it's going to have a couple more torn up race cars. And I believe it's actually officially taken the 7-Eleven of Elliott out of this race. Or I'm sorry, make that John Godfrey. Also, the 56 of Elliott is out of this race too. I don't know if he got involved in this wreck or not. I think he was right there in the vicinity.
Man, the 56 was having such a good run tonight. You hate to see it for him. It's a rough way to go out. But again, that happened about the half to 3/4 mark of the field. You got to wonder if there was a little bit of momentum loss, like you spoke on, being 3 or 4 miles an hour faster on that outside line and than they were on the inside. I know that inside line had started to dissipate quite a bit, so I wonder if that played any factor in that at all.
Manny D and Perry Bond were involved in this as well. It looks like a checkup there. John Godfrey getting to the back of Bernie Mobbs, and then he loses momentum, and Donnie Garrett's into the back of him. Now, I might be clutching at straws here, but I do remember that back on one of the restarts when Bernie Mobbs was the race leader, I think it was Seminara tried to give him a shove, and Seminara's front end kind of went into the back of the 90. Bernie Mobbs earlier on had some connection problems. He was blinking a little bit. I almost wonder if maybe with Godfrey, when he got up to the back bumper of the 90, there might have been a slight bit of warp where the 90 was back a little further. The hitbox was back a little further than Godfrey anticipated. That's where the contact and the checkup happened.
Yeah, and those chain reactions can be so fatal. As you saw, I don't even think that there was anything Donnie Garrett could have done. With as fast as he was running on an inside line, again, like we said earlier, having drafting help behind him, he may have been completely out of the gas and still, took that car up the racetrack. So it's just really unfortunate. Byproduct of super speedway racing, though, when you're racing in a line like that, sometimes when a car checks up 4 or 5 cars ahead of you, you don't realize how much speed that's going to cost you by the time it gets back to you. And it's such an abrupt checkup. There's just hardly any time to react to it.
You saw the contact afterwards that sent Donnie Garrett into the outside wall as he had contact to the left front, courtesy of the 57 of Stefan Martel. And I thought that based off of what I saw, it looked like the 56 of Jeffrey Elliott just kind of doored it into Manny D. Looked like he was okay, but it was the shot that he then took on the back straightaway, getting into Donnie Garrett, that has put his car back in the garage area. So 31 cars started the night. 27 right now look like they are en route to finishing it. But again, still a long ways to go in this race. And now with the timing of this caution, Zach, this makes things really interesting as far as fuel is concerned, because we're probably going to get back green on lap 44. And just based off the calculations of how far these drivers have been able to stretch fuel, they could maybe make it to about lap 64. I don't know if it's possible for them to save that extra lap and a half to maybe 2 laps of fuel.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any way that they can make that happen right now. I think that that number 20 is a pretty solid number in terms of how many laps you can make it before you need to pit for fuel. Some guys might be able to make 21. Some guys might be able to only make 19 if you're at the front of the pack, which is why I feel that 20 number is a pretty good average. So if we get anything, if we get a green flag prior to that, there's not a doubt in my mind that at the very minimum, somebody's going to have to make a another pit stop for gas, probably a half can or so after that.
And we pretty much know as well that if we get another 2-3 laps in after going green, everybody would be able to come to pit road and they would be able to make it on fuel. And then after that, it's really just all going to be about track position than it is going to be about pit strategy.
You know, I think a lot of guys are probably thinking if this goes green the rest of the way, which I think we're about to the point of the race. I'm betting there's only 15 to 17 cars at this point that don't have any damage whatsoever. I think there's a pretty good chance we could probably go green from here. But what that would also mean would be green flag pit stops with about 2 to 3 laps to go. Assuming these guys can keep in packs, it might get a little bit exciting coming on a pit road about 20 laps from now, Seth.
Absolutely. You know, you've got drivers up here. If you remember last week, we had a number of drivers that had some damage, and we were kind of playing the guessing game of who was up to speed and who isn't. There are a couple of drivers up here in this front pack that have been involved in some wrecks today. That 9 of Chris Elliott took a pretty hard shot back on, I think it was on our third caution. I'm not certain if he might be up to speed. He might be slowing some of these guys up when we go back green.
Yeah, and I'm also kind of concerned with the 712 of Bob Seminaro. We saw he did get into Josh Metallic on that first incident on pit road. Car looks to be okay right now, but you'd be surprised how much just that little bit of damage to the nose of that race car, can shave off a mile per hour or two at the end of the straightaway and make a big difference at the end of the race.
We talked about the fact that we're getting closer and closer, one step at a time, one lap at a time, from figuring out who the 10 drivers are that are going to be battling for the playoffs. So if we're looking in terms of the playoff cutoff line coming into this race, quite a number of drivers that were up ahead of it have struggled here tonight. Sonny Tallman, 6th in the standings. John Godfrey, 7th in points. They're out of the race. Donnie Garrett, we saw take that hard shot into the wall. He was 10th in the standings. Some of the drivers that have been running pretty well here this evening that could be ready to capitalize and move their way into the top 10. You got Dave Melson. He's been up here towards the front most of this race. He was 8th in points coming into this. Bob Dixon, who's out in front right now, going to be leading us to green when these lights go out this next time around. He was tied for 10th. Bernie Mobbs has also been up here towards the front. So we could have some new names up here above that cutoff line when we get to the 5th race next week.
And another thing to take into consideration is I don't think that there's any real surprise that if you look at 1, 2, and 3 in the point standings right now, you've got the 24, the 84, and the 712. Where are those guys running right now, Seth? 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Then you've also got Grant Wesley and Chuck McClure in 4th and 5th positions in the points. Where are those guys? Grant doing real good in 6th. Chuck McClure, not so hot back in 24th, but I think he's still got time to get back up toward the front of the pack. Just goes to show zero coincidence in track performance, how well you can outlast your competitors and finish ahead of them at the end, and what it's going to mean for you in the big picture at the end of the season.
Yeah, whenever we go to Daytona, whenever we go to Talladega, I always dub them wild card tracks, but it blows my mind how drivers are able to go to tracks like this and consistently get good finishes. You mentioned those drivers we have up there at the top of the point stands. Why are they there? Because they consistently finish well here at Talladega. Absolutely boggles my mind as to how they're able to come away with great finishes. A lot of drivers multi-time winners during the season, week after week after week. There's an art to it here at Talladega. I've never been able to master it. I can't wrap my head around how they're able to master it, but obviously these guys good at what they do, and we're going to have to wait and see here if drivers like Dante Ricky or Grant Wesley can maybe double down, find victory lane again. Bob Seminara there as well. Joe DeSpirito, we talked to him, I think it was last week, and he says, yeah, I love starting on the pole, but I want to finish up there at the front as well.
Well, and it's only going to be a matter of time. If he keeps starting as well as he has and running as well as he has, uh, there's a reason that he's a points leader. You know, even though he hasn't won a race yet this season, doesn't mean that he's not going to. I would be more surprised if he didn't win a race by the end of the season than I would be if he won every pole for the rest of the season, Seth.
Getting ready to go back green, and I've just been told that if these drivers can stretch it as far as the fuel window will allow them, they're going to be one lap short. So this is going to be really interesting here if we manage to go green to the end, because some of these drivers might risk it, might try and save, might try and make it to the end if we don't have another caution.
I'll tell you what, if I'm a Chuck McClure right now, somebody that's running, 20th on back, I think by the time that I get to the end of these straightaways with as much speed as these leaders are carrying, I think I might try out the clutch. See, can I save a little bit of gas? All that those cars in the back need to save right now is one lap, because they've got all that draft. The leaders are taking away all that air and all the friction that's causing, more fuel use in the engines, everything like that. So I think if I'm them right now, I'm okay running in 20th position. I don't want to get wrecked or anything like that, but if I can stay there, I think I got a better chance at making it on fuel than the guys up front do.
Boy, nobody being able to get an edge right now at the front. Chris Elliott's Dodge up top, Bob Dixon's Dodge on the bottom. You got Ricky trying to push the 9, DeSpirito trying to push the 143, and everybody looks like they're testing the waters to maybe try a 3-wide situation. Another thing I want to mention too, our second race of the season ended under caution. The caution comes out with 3 or 4 laps to go. There's the likelihood the race is going to end under yellow. You could maybe clutch and make those final 2 or 3 laps on fuel.
You absolutely could. I think that's something that a lot of these guys are probably thinking about right now with this pit strategy the way it is. We see the 84, he got a big run on that 9 car about halfway down the back straightaway, really pulled away. It looks like that 9 car is struggling a bit. I bet you it has something to do with that body damage that he got as a result of those crashes earlier tonight.
Now, Dante Ricky obviously trying to get his second win of the season. The bad news right now for him, though, being out in that clean air, he can't save. So he's going to be the one car out of everybody else in the field that's going to be doing the most fuel consumption.
100%. Between him and the 9 car, those are the two that have to be the most worried. I think the 24, the 712, they're going to have to be concerned about it too, but only if they end up, consistently at the top. It was almost 4 wide going into turn 3
I think they
there.
were. First time this season we've seen them 4 wide.
Man, things are getting crazy. Everybody knows it's time to go, Seth. There's only about 20 laps to go. We're going to have to make another pit stop. Where is the best spot on the racetrack for me to be when I need to get to that low line? I don't want to be stuck on that top line or that middle line, Seth. When it's time to come in for pits, I want to be on that bottom.
So Grant Wesley able to tuck back in line third on that outside line in front of Mark Paglia. It looked like he was starting to drift to the back with no friends in the third lane. Middle line moving though. Dante Ricky losing ground as DeSpirito goes back to the front. Seminara is going to push in there, trying to clear for second by the time they get down into turn 3.
Yeah, that top line definitely has more cars right now. Again, we see Dante wanting to be able to make some moves on that top line, but just kind of a sitting duck. The 143, I think if Dixon could get up to his back bumper, give him a little bit more of a push, it might be able to work out. But we see Skelton jump to the outside line there. They're losing a lot of people on that low line, and that top line's checking out.
And we may not be done with cautions. They're 3 wide, 2 rows deep back at the tail end of this lead pack. Stefan Martel, Dave Melson, Mike Rogers were in the middle of the first formation, and then further back there you got that's Krentz on the top side, Pribnow in the middle, and Cy Jones on the bottom. If these drivers run each other out of room, we may see a yellow flag come out as Pribnow almost got up into Mike Rogers. And obviously a caution would have everybody here breathing a sigh of relief because they'd know they'd be able to make it on fuel, and it would really come down to a money pit stop for these drivers under caution.
It really would. If you look at the leaders right now, I think you've got about the first 15, 16 cars. They're all single file in that middle groove. I think they're thinking fuel consumption at this point. I think everybody wants to win. They want to get their cars up there. But if everybody's just running single file like this, no car is really running it any harder than any of the other is. However, that 24 and the 712, they might have a little bit something to worry about here, is they're going to be running themselves a little bit short.
You know, at Talladega, any super speedway, it's all about positioning. Talked about Mark Paglia. This is the position he is in the point standings coming into this one, a former playoff contender from last year. If he can't make it on fuel with the situation he's in right now, we talked about that really a good finish is what he needs to get his season turned around. Do you play it the conventional way? Do you come to pit road when the window opens to make sure you're going to be able to make it the rest of the way? Or do you run that risk of seeing if you can stretch it to the checkered flag?
Well, I think the biggest unknown right now, Seth, is us up here in the booth not knowing exactly how short it is for them. I think if he's got a half a lap of gas, if he's short by a half a lap, I think you stay out there and you try to make that work. But anything more than that, I think you have to come in and pit. I don't think in a position that he's in, especially where he's at with points, he's having a solid run in 4th place right now. He can't afford to make a mistake, to run himself out of gas. That could be the end of his season if that happens.
Couple of drivers that are up here that are trying to get their season turned around as well. Bobby Farrell is now up to 5th. I also see that blue number 10 back there of Terry Bombard. He was a lap down earlier on in this race. He's now worked his way up into the 8th position. Terry coming into this race 27th in the points.
Yeah, good old Bumby. We saw him. I believe he went out in a crash last week. Wasn't able to make it to the end. Having a real solid finish just kind of goes to show that you can lose a little bit of time at the beginning of these races and still be able to make it up later on, especially if you get some yellows, catch a lucky dog, get yourself back up in there into that lead pack, and it's really paying off for him right now in 8th.
I think we're starting to see the split of the drivers that have damage that's affecting their speed and the drivers that don't. Chuck McClure, Chris Elliott at the tail end of this lead group. They're around 15th, 16th, 17th. Then you got 18th place. That's Wiley Coate with Cy Jones. Actually, those drivers got a bit of a run there. They might be okay. I was actually told in the YouTube chat that in the situation of Wiley Coate, yes, he did flip and barrel roll, got that roof damage, but really in terms of speed, any damage doesn't affect you unless it's to that front end. So Wiley Coate might still be okay despite him flipping over in turn 4.
But I think all he's looking to do is get a finish tonight. Every point counts, and if he can make that thing run to the end, even if he gets a 20th place finish, that's better than a 30th place finish. I don't think that's anything to scoff at. Up front, looks like Metallic trying to make a move down low with Skelton. They're not getting a whole lot of help right now, though.
Bob Dixon was just on pit road, but by himself, so he should be able to make it on fuel, but making the choice to come down pit road all alone, he's going to have nobody to draft when he comes back out here up to speed on the racetrack. We'll have to see if that's going to be a costly error, but that seems to be Bob Dixon's moniker. We've seen the last couple of weeks when he makes a green flag pit stop, usually there's nobody else that comes down with him.
You know, that's really interesting. I'm really surprised that he came down by himself, because he's losing a ton of time out there on the racetrack right now. These leaders are all lined up single file. These guys are going as fast as they possibly could. Meanwhile, he's kind of stuck there by himself. I think if he can keep that draft, or hold on to a draft, any sort of advantage that he can get at this point, I just don't think by yourself alone on a super speedway, that's just not the way to go.
Going around Perry Bond, who just got put a lap down, so that actually is a battle for 26th position, as Metallic might be clear on Manny D. We'll see if he shifts up to that outside line. Nope, outside line got too much of a run. He wouldn't have been able to get up there without possibly making some contact. Got a couple of other drivers that are going a lap down here. The 9 of Chris Elliott, who I believe was just on pit road a lap ago, now going to go -1, and they're catching up to the 54 of Robbie Nisus. Now, I don't think that Nisus is off the pace just due to crash damage. He had some connection problems back on that last restart, ducked down to the inside line, waiting for it to settle out, lost the draft as a result.
Oh, it looked like he might have scuffed the wall coming off of turn 2 as well. That's going to hurt his momentum in a big way. But we see that 39 and the 94, they got stuck on that bottom line. Nobody's willing to run that line right now, Seth. Everybody wants to just kind of stay in line until that last run of green flag pit stops, which at this point, it looks like there's a pretty good chance that could happen.
Well, my question here would be, could this be the line, the inside line, where they're trying to maybe save some fuel, staying out of the way of those drivers in that middle line, trying to clutch a little bit and see if they can make it to the checkers?
That could very well be, but I'm not convinced that they had enough speed at the end of the straightaways. I really think they were just kind of stuck down there. You can lose just a little bit of speed and be able to recover it, but when you have cars lined up the way that they are running the middle of this racetrack, they get such big runs, and they're also making runs on the cars in front of them, so you just don't have room to get back up into the draft again. So we'll see how that works out for them. If they can save gas, I think they're doing all right. But I'm looking at that 17 car that we talked about when we went back to green about liking where he was in terms of saving fuel. He's still right about in the middle of the pack. I got to imagine right now Chuck McClure might be thinking to himself, can I make this fuel strategy work at the end of this race, Seth?
We'll have to see. I mean, McClure right now, right up on the back bumper of Dave Melson, has Glenn Harris right up to his back bumper, so not much of an opportunity to be able to clutch without possibly getting run over by that 08. And I'm also a little bit concerned about this 710 of Manny D because he got involved in a wreck earlier on. It looks like he's not quite being able to keep touch with Bernie Mobbs up ahead, so he might be slowing this group behind him down just a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. Chuck McClure and Jessica Shelton door banging there through 3 and 4.
Both cars making it through all right. That was a real close call for sure. But the other thing I'm curious about too, they can't clutch. However, what they can do is they can get off the gas a little bit more, being about mid to back of the pack than those guys up front can, and not have to worry about losing too much. But as I'm watching the telemetry right now, they only lost a couple miles an hour, so I think they're all in at this point.
Yep, I think that I just received confirmation. It will come down to a pit stop for these drivers. Nobody is good to make it on fuel based off of the 2X that they run here in terms of tire wear and fuel consumption. Everyone going to be about 2 to 3 laps short. So now it's a question of when do you hit pit road because the window's open to make it the rest of the way from here on out.
The 712 car just got shuffled out of line in a big way, Seth. He went from second place. He's falling all the way back. He's going to fall out of the top 10 right now. That is a huge... Oh, we got a car into the front stretch wall under the start-finish line.
I think that might have been Jessica Shelton, the 94. She keeps it straight, keeps the momentum up. I don't think she's going to lose the lead pack, but pancaking the right side there just at the start-finish line.
Man, that was a heck of a hit. And that 28 of Paglia up front, though, those top 3 cars really fast. Mark Paglia, if he can keep this run going, it's like we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast, where he was in points. He could be sitting in a really good position to capitalize on points tonight.
Well, when these drivers come to Talladega, in this type of a season, these type of races, they're about maybe 95% racer, but they're 5% diplomats, having to kind of go up and down their radios, find someone to come to pit road with them, and this is going to be the money stop here when they come to pit road, and we already had our first caution come out with drivers coming to pit road to make green flag pit stops. So these drivers now, hopefully they've gotten all the kinks out and they're going to be able to get on there safely because it could be a make it or break it moment for these drivers as we nearly had a wreck at the front. Grant Wesley makes a move to the inside. Despirito tried to block him.
And we got a couple cars that are waving out the window to come into the pits this time by. I don't see any of the leaders, though. They're getting really racy. Again, the 24 falling back farther through the pack. Will the 712, his teammate, be able to help him here?
He's going to fall back to Seminara as, right, nobody up in this lead group coming to pit road, but we do have a couple of drivers that were at the tail end of the pack that look like they're going to be coming down pit road. Cy Jones really slow in the 7 car. Not sure what's going on with him.
Seth, I had to laugh because a moment ago you said this is about 5% diplomacy, but with every passing lap right now, this time by, they're going to be coming up on 5 to go. With every lap, they're going to lose another percentage of that diplomacy by the time that checkered flag falls.
Absolutely. And of course, as well, I'm not really certain 2 to 3 laps short if a caution were to come out at the point where it would end under yellow, if they'd be able to clutch enough to be able to make it to the checkered flag, being that short on fuel. As off turn 4, let's see if anybody's going to duck to pit lane this time from the lead pack, and doesn't look like anybody, at least up inside of the top 15, coming to pit road this time. We're getting up here to lap 62. The next time by, when we hit the line, next flag would more than likely end the race.
Yeah, and I think those leaders right now are pretty content to just run that inside line.
Oh, Joe DeSpirito nearly got sent up into the wall courtesy of the 10 of Terry Bombard.
Another close call. That just goes to show how racy this is getting, Seth. 5 laps to go. See some more drivers waving their hands out the window here. We got some more pit stops coming.
We very well might. Some of these drivers might be trying to fake each other out as well, saying, I'm coming this time. And then drivers hit
we got
pit lane, they
trouble.
decide to stay
Carson
out.
Krenz, Bernie Mobs. 2 cars up into the wall out of 4.
Glenn Harris in the 08 as well. Caution's going to fly, and this is going to make things very interesting. I think that was Bobby Farrell that just hit pit road. It's going to be at the line. Grant Wesley by a splitter leading us to the caution. The question is now, though, can all of these drivers clutch and make it these final 4 pace laps on fuel?
Yeah, unfortunately, that is going to be the race right there. They're not going to be able to make it back to green as we do have some cars a lap down. So, assuming the 88 can clutch it back, he'll be the victor, but I don't know. I don't know how much fuel that these guys got right now.
We were told about 2 to 3 laps short, and I think you can save about a half lap under pacing. Oh, it's going to be tough because pace car is going to be going, I believe, 70 miles per hour. The race leaders are going to have to make sure they maintain at that pace speed as well. If they slow down any more than that, they would more than likely not be maintaining pace speed and would have to give up their positions. So this is going to be really interesting. We'll go back and look at the replay as quickly as we can, then come back and find out this developing story here with 3 laps to go.
Yeah, and that's a shame. This was shaping up to be a really good finish. You hate to see it end like that. But again, I mean, we're not sure if these guys are going to be able to clutch it enough to the end.
Incident started with, as you said, the 0-3 of Carson Krenz, and we'll see what happened to him. Looked like he was on the top side of a 3 wide situation, maybe. Well, nope, just double wide, and either contact between himself and Dante Ricci or himself and Richard Martin. We'll see which one it is. Look very similar to what we had earlier in the 3 wide situation with Perry Bond and Mike Rogers, just that car on the inside line pushing up on corner entry, and well, actually Carson Krenz kind of came down on Richard Martin. Krenz paid the price. He goes around, nowhere for Glenn Harris or Bernie Mobs to go, and that's a tough break there for Bernie Mobs, who started this race from the outside of the front row.
Yeah, he came in here 12th in points. He really needed a good finish to try to get up into that top 10. You hate to see it. Just a note, Seth, the 13 of Dave Melson and the 10 of Terry Bombard, they did come in to get fuel. So at least 2 drivers on the track right now, not entirely confident that they'll be able to make it back to the checkered flag. I see, it looks like and sounds like Grant Wesley in the 88 is all over the clutch going down the back straightaway. But I don't know, if I was comfortable, if I thought that I could make it back with as far back as that 88 is hanging from the pace car right now, I'd be passing that 88 car.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, right now he's maintaining about 70 miles per hour. Dropped it down to about 68. You keep seeing him there as you watch that middle dial, the needle go all the way down. He is clutching the race car. He is maintaining right around 70 miles per hour for the moment. But the problem is, for a number of these other guys behind him, they're in the same situation as well. So you don't really want to run the risk of going around him, using up that little bit of fuel to do it. And I'm being told leader might be running out of fuel before we get to the end of this thing. A lot of drivers, they're flatlining. They've got that dial blinking red right now as far as their fuel pressure.
You see that 88 down on the apron, the 24 not anywhere near that back bumper. You know, I don't think I've ever seen a more exciting race under caution ever in my life before, Seth. What are we witnessing right now?
I mean, for heaven's sakes, when we go to Talladega, we expect to see 3 wide at over 190 miles per hour. Right now, we're seeing maybe one of the best finishes of the season at a measly 70 miles per hour under pacing. It's all a question of who's got enough in the tank to make it around for what's going to be a grueling 5 miles for these drivers.
Yep, 2 to go at the line. Another pretty good handful of cars coming into the pits that time by to get fuel.
All right, so let's figure out of the drivers that have already pitted who might be in the best situation. And I think it would end up being that 10 of Terry Bombard. He's going to be crossing the line in the 13th position. We know he can make it on fuel. Same for Dave Melson. So it's all the question of these other 12 drivers up ahead of him.
Man, Seth, I don't, you know, when we were talking earlier about exciting finishes, I guess I made the false assumption that my entire life that an exciting finish had to be under green flag, but Grant, Grant Wesley, Joe DeSpirito, Bob Seminara, Mark Paglia, Josh Metallic, Dante Ricci, all cars in the top 6. They're proving us wrong right now. We don't need a green flag for the ending to be exciting.
And it really all questions as well who was saving under that green flag run, because they might be just a little bit better on fuel than some of these other guys up here at the front. We know that Wesley, DeSpirito, Seminara, they weren't holding anything back. They were obviously on that run nowhere near fuel saving mode. So some of those other guys back there, like you mentioned, maybe Dante Ricci, Chuck McClure, Richard Martin, did they save maybe just the least little bit? That could be the difference maker here, as we're going to be coming out of turn number 3. And boy, I would be really worried if I'm that 88 of Grant Wesley, because he spent a good portion of that last run out in front.
Yeah, he really did. Hey, how bad do you think the 24 wants that 88 to run out of fuel right now? How many times have we talked to Bob, and Bob says, I don't care about the polls. I just want to get the win. What do you think he's doing? Do you think he's got a voodoo doll in that car right now?
I think he very well might be. I mean, he's the defending champion of the series. We asked him last week, does that put pressure on you trying to live up to that? And he said, no, I just approach Talladega every week with the mentality of going out and winning. Not sure this is quite the way he planned, possibly trying to take a checkered flag for his first of the season, but we've got 2.66 miles to decide it all, and at a snail's pace, we're about to find out who's going to have the fumes to get back around to the start-finish line.
Seth, I don't think I've ever watched a race that's not been finished where the pace car has a 2-second lead on the leader. That 88 does not want to give up any more than he has to. And again, I think if I'm the 24 car, if I think I have enough fuel, is that 8? I don't know. I guess that 88 is still doing about 67, 66 miles per hour. So he's not too far off that pace speed, but man, I'll tell you what, it looks like right now Wesley's going to be okay, but we still got a half a racetrack left to go.
Absolutely. I've just been told by RTG admins, the ruling is that the drivers must maintain the pace speed of 70 miles per hour, and they must make it back to the start-finish line without any outside help. So, man, they are crawling down this back straightaway right now. They're going the pace speed. They're going 70 miles per hour, but just based on the fact you can see they're clutching it looks like they're going even slower.
Yeah, and that time on the telemetry, I saw the 88 down to 63 miles an hour. Again, I think if I'm that 24 car, I want to pass that 88, get right up to the bumper of that pace car, and if the 88's got enough, make him get up there and keep that speed.
Grant's down there on the apron trying to see if he can allow the fuel to stay a little bit longer in the tank of that Gatorade Chevrolet. Remember, Grant Wesley, a winner this season, won the only other race that finished under caution. That was race number 2. DeSpirito has started on the pole 4 straight weeks. He's trying to go to victory lane for the first time this season. And Bob Seminara, he's back there licking his chops, hoping for back-to-back wins, but it's just a tri-oval to go. Grant Wesley might be able to make it to the start-finish line from here. We'll have to wait and see.
They work their way into the tri-oval, Seth, behind the pace car at a breakneck 72 miles per hour. Joe DeSpirito in the low line. Will this 88 get the victory if he takes the checkered flag under that yellow line?
I think he might, because he's not advancing his position, and he'll bring it back up behind the pace car, and he does make it. Just about everybody behind him makes it as well. What a nerve-wracking final 4 laps here at Talladega, as Grant Wesley, you talked about him possibly being your pick to be the multi-time winner first of the season. He gets it done here. The even races have been kind to Grant Wesley so far.
Yeah, Wesley had just enough, and it makes me wonder if he was just messing with those cars or if he's really out of gas. I think he might actually really be out of gas now. I'm not, I'm not positive.
I would not be surprised, to be honest with you. His pace kind of backed down a little bit here, and yeah, I think he is out of fuel. I think Chuck McClure, Richard Martin trying to help get that 88 pushed back to victory lane, but man, you're right. It's one of those things you don't think about at a super speedway. You expect a photo finish, you expect a fuel strategy race, but more often you expect it under green flag conditions. You don't normally think outside the box of a possibility of drivers running out of fuel under pacing in a race that's going to end under the caution flag.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that play out that way before. I'm not saying it's never happened, but I don't think I personally have ever watched it play out. You know, and that's the unfortunate part about these super speedways. With as big as these tracks are, you usually get 3 or 4 laps of yellow flag, and that fourth one always seems a bit overkill. So it's a shame that we couldn't see a green flag finish. But at the same time, we still saw a great finish for 70 miles per hour.
We absolutely did. And how about Grant Wesley if you consider, his last 3 weeks? Of course, the high of winning back at race number 2, but then was not able to take part in last week's race and dropped down to 5th in the point standings. He mentioned the fact that he wants to win the regular season championship heading into the playoffs, get those extra bonus points. Well, what a way to do it here tonight, finding victory lane yet again.
Yeah, and that top 5 in points all finished in the top 7 positions here tonight too. So, as we talked about earlier with Mark Paglia, had a real solid 4th place finish. That'll help him out a little bit in the points as well. I don't know if that's going to put him right into contention, but that's a pretty good rebound considering where he was at. Again, Grant Wesley with the victory, Joe DeSpirito 2nd, Bob Seminara 3rd. Mark Paglia coming in a solid 4th, and Josh Metallic rounding out that top 5. Another pretty good showing tonight, Seth. A lot of fun doing this.
Absolutely. I mean, a great comeback finish there for Metallic. Dante Ricky, again, the back to the front strategy works. And I think maybe Grant might have been trying to save some fuel, have them push him to the start finish line so he could do some burnouts. But I think that well has run dry. I think he's just maybe getting himself an opportunity for fans to take a photo of that 88 at the start finish line. I don't think he's got anything in the tank to do some burnouts here.
No, he's just gonna park it there and enjoy the fact that he made it back to the start finish line at all. Good showing tonight for Wesley.
And the thing of it is too, Wesley and all these other drivers were able to make it on fuel, but there's some other comeback stories just outside or just inside of the top 10 as well. You got Manny D, who we saw pancake the outside wall earlier on. He was able to make it on fuel in 9th. Wiley Coate, we saw that car barrel rolling down the banking of turn 4. He's still going to leave Talladega with a top 10 run, and we saw Jessica Shelton getting used up quite a bit there coming to that caution flag. She's going to bring it home 11th. Cy Jones there in 12th. So, not only did we have drivers up there at the front that were battling for a win, we had a lot of drivers back here that probably were en route to finish us outside of the top 15, maybe the top 20 that are coming away with top 10 runs.
Yeah, and that's just a good solid points day. When it comes to these super speedways, the worst that you can do is wreck out and be caught in some stuff that you didn't want yourself involved in. But the best that you can do, even on a bad day, is a top 10. And I think that's what we saw out of those drivers. They turned something from what could have been a really catastrophic, rough day into top 10 runs. And that's extremely commendable. Guys don't get enough credit for doing that.
Looking here at the rest of the finishing results, as Talladega claimed 4 drivers that did not finish it out: John Godfrey, Jeffrey Elliott, Sonny Tallman, and Benoit Plord. And, we talked about drivers that might be moving up there into the top 10 in points with the hard luck to 55 and the 7-11 had here tonight. I'm looking at some names like Josh Metallic, Cy Jones, Richard Martin, drivers that were outside the top 10, 14 through 16th. They're going to gain quite a bit in the standings after this one.
Oh yeah, those are going to be huge gains for those guys. That'll definitely probably, if not put them in the top 10, put them in a position that they'll be knocking right on the door of that top 10. But I can't wait to talk to these guys tonight. I got to imagine that Joe DeSpirito is trying so hard to figure out what he has to do to win one of these races. He's so fast, but again, as we leave tonight, Grant Wesley with the 2nd win on the season, the 1st repeat winner. Joe DeSpirito gonna come out on top. I think that's might gap him and Dante Ricci just a little bit going into week 5 next week.
I think you're right. I mean, yeah, Joe DeSpirito so far this season has not had a finish outside of the top 4, and this is best finish of the season with a second place run. Let's get a word with last week's winner, Bob Seminara, who was able to bring it home third place here tonight. Hey, Bob, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Well, we're doing great. I mean, what an unbelievable finish to this race. Not normally what we expect to see at Talladega. We expect fuel strategy races, but not necessarily at 70 to 75 miles per hour under pacing. Man, we know that you guys had to be close, but just how close was it?
I had less than 3 pounds left, but I mean we were short. We were short like 3 laps, so we were going to have to do a half a can till the caution came out. So I mean it was just clutching it all the way around.
When we saw the first round of green flag pit stops, there were about 20 of you that came to pit road, and we saw a lot of contact, a lot of drivers spinning, some drivers missing the entrance to pit road. With that in the back of your mind, did you have maybe only a few drivers you were going to come to pit road with here if that last green flag pit stop was going to take place?
Yeah, I was worried about that. I was just going to come in when the 24 did, but yeah, I was worried about a green flag stop. I kind of wanted it to go all the way, get that caution and try to stay on the track, but I lost. I got juked there and I lost position, so I wasn't in a position to win.
Hey Bob, Zach in the booth. Hey, good solid third place finish again tonight. We see that you are third place in points. Maybe make a little bit of ground on Dante Ricci after tonight's race. We saw that you had a little bit of contact on pit road with Josh Metallic in that first pit road incident. Did you get any damage from that? And was that at all in the back of your mind moving forward throughout the rest of the race?
No, I didn't get any damage. Yeah, Josh, did what he had to do. He held his ground right there, and I tried to get around him. Yeah, I didn't get any damage on that. But I knew, pit road is tough. It depends where you're pitting and who's diving in front of you, and you got to get around them. So yeah, I was worried about pitting.
One thing that we saw, Bob, was in this race, this is race 4. You guys, after tonight, still have 6 more races until the playoff grid is put together. But we saw, maybe as opposed to last week, a lot more door banging, a lot more pinching, a lot more aggressive racing. What do you think it was tonight that had drivers maybe being a little bit more aggressive, not giving quite as much room?
Yeah, I don't know. There seemed like some different guys in the mix at times, and there was some lane bullying going on, and guys were trying to hold their ground. And yeah, I don't know. It was just real hard racing. I mean, it was fun, but you had to watch and you had to see who you were around and where you were willing to stick it.
Well, obviously, Bob, I mean, coming off your victory last week, already locked into the playoffs, we know that you're now trying to get up there to the top of the standings to get the regular season championship and carry those playoff points into the chase. But we're going to let you do some shout outs now.
Yeah, we're gonna keep running hard every week, like I said, and yeah, it was fun. Shout out to RTG and all the admins and the owners and you guys at Flatout Racing. And it's only a third place, so I'm not gonna shout out to everybody. We'll come back next week.
That's Bob Seminara. He's going to finish on the podium yet again, bringing it home third place here tonight at Talladega. And let's now get the guy that finishes in the second position here this evening. Best finish of the season so far for the defending champion, Joe DeSpirito. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey guys, I got you. How you doing?
Well, first off, congratulations on 4 straight poles here so far this season. We're kind of trying to weigh the odds of maybe you going 10 for 10 in the regular season or 15 for 15 in the entire season. But man, what a final couple of laps here, crawling at 70 miles per hour. We just talked with Bob Seminara on how close he was on fuel. Where were you as far as how much fuel you had left coming to that checkered flag?
Yeah, man, I love Wendy's. That 4 for 4 on the qualifying, that pole. Yeah, the fuel was tight. I probably had the least amount left just because I led so many laps. Yeah, I couldn't make it around another time. That was it. That was the last lap I could make it. So I was just clutching it around there on the caution and crossing my fingers that maybe Grant would run out, and no, he didn't. So yeah, I'll take another second place.
I mean, you haven't had a finish outside of the top 5 here in the first 4 races. The good starting track position, of course, has played a huge part into that. But, we knew that all of you guys could not make it on fuel. You were more than likely, if this race didn't end under caution, you were going to have to make a pit stop there in the final 5 laps or so. What was your mentality of when you were going to come to pit road? Were you going to try and run that thing dry, or were you going to maybe try and short pit and kind of leapfrog some of those others?
Well, I wanted a short pit, and we kind of talked it over, me and my guys, and if we short pit and then the caution comes out, and I don't know, it might not work out with what happens. So, yeah, we just tried to run it as long as possible, and everybody was gonna pit there, right, coming out of turn 4, and then I guess there was a wreck behind us, and then everybody panicked and went back up on the track. So, yeah, I kind of happy the way it finished because there would have been a lot of maybe big wrecks going into the pits. A lot of people hot pitting. So, like I said, I'll take second. I'm happy with that. But I'm itching for that win.
Hey, Joe, Zach in the booth. As you say, you're still itching for that win. 4 for 4 on pole positions. Not a single finish outside the top 5. Coming out of tonight's race with tonight's races in the books and a second place finish, you're going to be firmly atop that point standings. But I got to ask you, how many poles would you give up for a win at this point?
Yeah, I definitely give it up for the win, man. Yeah, I give them all up for a win right now. I'd like to be locked into the playoffs. I mean, I'm sitting pretty good to be in it right now, but just to have that relief that you're in it no matter what is really nice. So we got the bracket series starting next week. I'm kind of looking forward to that too. That kind of changes how you race. You got to worry about the guy you're going head to head against. So that'll change things. But I heard you guys talking to Bob, and yeah, there was some crazy aggressive driving tonight. I don't know. I think we were 4 wide a couple times tonight, so it was kind of sketchy. But like I said again, happy with second. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations, Joe. It's good to talk to you. Good to see you doing so well, man. Do you got anybody that you'd like to give a shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to thank my boys, APW Racing, Bob, Bernie, FTMF, Mobs Motors, everybody at work watching tonight live on YouTube here. I'd like to thank my girlfriend for letting me race every Thursday night. Like I said, thank you guys again. Always putting on a good show. RTG, best place to race on Thursday nights, and another good one in the books, guys. Thanks again.
That's Joe DeSpirito. He brings it home second place here this evening, his best finish of the season. And again, 4 straight top 5 finishes for the defending champion, continuing to try and extend his points lead as we get closer to the midway point of the regular season. Let's now go down to victory lane. Probably the 88 had to be pushed there by his crew, but let's see if we can get a word with Grant Wesley. Hey, Grant, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey, Seth and Zach.
Well, I mean, man, what a wild couple of weeks it's been for you. You take the checkered flag 2 weeks ago. Last week, obviously, you were down in Bristol enjoying the NASCAR race, so you weren't here. But then tonight, my goodness, did you expect this kind of a finish to take place where it was all going to come down to fumes?
I had no clue. Like in all my experience of NASCAR 2003 racing, I have never done that what I did tonight. Whenever I crossed the line for the yellow flag, it was 4 laps to go, and I was showing 1 projected. I thought there was no way I was going to make it. I came around, and that entire lap, cool down lap, I planned to pit. I was like, man, everyone's got to pit. But I was kind of reading everybody in my mirror. I was talking to DMAR on the radio, and I was kind of undecided, and nobody was pitting behind me. And I was like, you know what? Heck with it. I'm just going to stay out and just clutch it for all it's got.
Obviously having that win 2 weeks ago, did that play a factor into that decision, knowing that you were already locked into the playoffs?
Oh, definite. Yeah. Getting that win and locking yourself into the playoffs, that weighed very heavily into that. I really didn't have a whole lot to lose there.
Hey, Grant, Zach in the booth. Good win tonight, my man. Second win on the season, first repeat winner that we've had in 4 races. I don't think, like you said, I've ever been a part of a race that I was equally excited to see what the turnout was going to be at the end of a yellow flag, checkered flag finish than I have been, one that finishes under green. That was just absolute insanity. Had you guys continued on without that yellow flag, at what point do you think you would have had to come in and get gas?
Um, w- I ran out a half lap after we crossed the checkered, but I got pretty aggressive with the throttle. I was losing about a pound of fuel a lap, pound to a pound and a half, and I had just under 2 pounds of fuel as I crossed the finish line there. So it's hard telling. I mean, I really don't know. I might have been able to get one more lap clutching it like I was, but it's just hard telling.
One thing that Zach alluded to when we were, following the broadcast around the halfway point was just how difficult it is to generate a run when you're tucked up right behind somebody else. And we saw you actually being able to do quite a number of slingshots. I think it was first with the 712 and then eventually with the 24, be able to kind of catch them out and have a drafting partner to push you by. Do you think that that's something that plays to your strength, the ability to be able to catch drivers off guard, to be able to make those moves? And do you think as the season goes on, drivers are going to start catching on to that?
Yeah, that's I mean, anytime you're out front, you're kind of a sitting duck. I mean, you're just kind of at the mercy of whoever wants to follow you. You can watch your mirror and you can kind of plan for things like that somewhat, but if you're sitting third, if you think you got guys that'll kind of go with you, um, you definitely have the heads up in those situations. I know there was a couple of times, like there with 15 to go, I was behind Chris Elliott on the outside, and I kind of feel bad for kind of shucking him to the third lane there, but we just weren't really meshing up real well. I felt like he was washing up a little higher than I wanted to be. So I seen that door open for like the third or fourth time, and I just took it down the backstretch. And unfortunately, I think that same lap, Bob and Joe did the same thing to Bob Dixon that was in front of them. So we were kind of 4 wide going into turn 3, and we all kind of held our breath for that moment.
Yeah, that was a hold your breath moment for us as well. I think it was the first time this season you guys have gone 4 wide, but you guys were able to make it through safely. I mean, Zach, obviously, I mean Grant rather, tremendous run for you here this evening. Your second trip to victory lane of the races you've started, you finished up inside of the top 2. Of course, last week not starting that race. Anybody that you would like to shout out here tonight?
Yeah. And I'm not gonna be here next week. I got a wedding to go to. It really sucks, but I'm just gonna try and knock down as many wins as I can to get bonus points for that chase, and hopefully still be in the top 20 in points. But yeah, I'd like to thank the owners here, Terry Bauman, Sean Prine, and David Cannon, and the admins, Josh and Wiley and Dante, and my teammates at XFM.
Well, Grant Wesley takes his second checkered flag of the season, your first multi-time winner here in the Talladega Challenge for season 51. Congrats on a great run here, Grant. I mean, so far you've won races 2 and 4. You're not going to be here next week. Maybe you can triple down in the even race numbers in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's the plan. And also, thanks to Dave Melson and Chuck for pushing me back to the start finish line there at the end. And good job on the broadcast.
That's Grant Wesley. He puts it in victory lane here tonight. And as he alluded to, had to kind of get pushed back to the start finish line, and undoubtedly had to get pushed back to the victory lane as well. But I mean, Zach, I think we already covered it, but it just kind of bears repeating. One of the kind of finishes at Talladega that you never expect to see, but it's just as exciting as if you saw them come into the line 3 wide at 190 miles per hour.
Yeah, definitely one of the most entertaining, strange finishes I have ever seen, ever. And I've been doing this for, I mean, we're talking about probably close to 15 years now, but still managed to be a good finish overall. And looking at the unofficial point standings, it looks like Grant Wesley, after having missed one race already, picking up his second win, He is securely in fourth place in points right now. Joe DeSpirito did gap Dante Ricci by about another 5 points. Bob Seminara sitting pretty comfortably in third, 13 points out as well. So, those top five in points, there's only 22 points separating them. Shelton in sixth, 35 back. Melson, seventh, 37 back. And Bernie Mobbs and Josh Metallic tied for eighth with Bob Dixon in 10th. We're not quite to the halfway point of this season, Seth, but I think that there's still quite a bit of ground to be gained if guys can have good finishes the next few races.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm seeing drivers that are outside of the top 10 in points that I still think have enough time to maybe mount a comeback. Because I'm looking right now, Jessica Shelton in sixth position. If you go from her all the way down to 21st place, Benoit Plord, there's only 30 point separation right there. There's a lot of ground that can be made up if you hit a streak of top five finishes. And another thing I wanted to ask you here, too, is we just heard that Grant Wesley is not going to be here next week. Well, with Wesley not here last week, Bob Seminara was able to find his way to victory lane. And we know Joe DeSpirito wants to find victory lane. Does this maybe open the door for DeSpirito? The fact the 88 will not be in the field next week, maybe, just maybe, be able to get that first win of the season?
I mean, it's definitely very possible. Bob Seminara pardon me, Joe DeSpirito and Josh Metallic actually led the way in laps led tonight with 15 apiece. DeSpirito's got to just be itching, but at the same time, he's in a very unique spot. Where as bad as you want to get that win right now, you also don't want to do something to, put yourself in trouble out on the racetrack that could take you from a top three or a top five finish and put you back. Tonight we had 31 cars. Sometimes you get the majority of those cars that finish on the lead lap, and you got to go into conservation mode. So I think at this point, as badly as DeSpirito wants a win, I think he wants that championship just as bad.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because if you think about it too, last year's regular season, DeSpirito only found victory lane one time, but when he made it into the playoffs, he went to victory lane twice, including the season finale, which eventually won him that championship trophy. So, if things are trending as they did last season, Joe DeSpirito could find himself with quite a bit of an energy spurt in terms of trips to victory lane when the playoffs begin. And as we alluded to, you win the regular season championship, you've got some pretty valuable bonus points heading into the playoffs. But man, again, a wild one here tonight, even though it ended at 70 miles per hour here, under pacing for the final four laps. The big question mark over pretty much the entire top 12 as to whether or not they were going to be able to make it on fuel. And Grant Wesley was able to get to the start finish line first for his second win of the season. Zach, had a blast with you last week, had a blast with you this week. It's been a great job, a great time with you here in the booth.
Yeah, Seth, I've really enjoyed this opportunity. I appreciate all the help that you guys have given me in getting set to do something like this. This is something I've wanted to do for a long, long time, and these 2 weeks have been a lot of fun. So I have to look into keep doing it, keeping it up. Would like to give another shout out to all my friends at RTG, all the owners, admins. Again, you, Seth, Matt, also everybody on the Flatout Racing Network. You guys do an excellent job. We all appreciate you guys and all the work that you guys do. So here's the race 5.
Absolutely. Hope everybody enjoyed our coverage here tonight of race 4. Next week, it's the midway point of the regular season before we head down the home stretch, determining the 10 drivers that will be in this season, season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge playoffs. For Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you guys next Thursday as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.